Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, back with another Warpforge video for you, and today I am bringing you my meta snapshot. Now, for those of you who have subscribed and been part of the channel for a while now, you know that from time to time I do meta reports, things like that, and I've actually come up with a new format that I'm testing today, so I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this format. Let me know in the comments what you think. But the idea is to come up with a meta snapshot format, and what I plan to do with this is bring this to you every few weeks. So there will be a lot of similarities, but it's more about keeping on the beat of the meta and kind of like giving you updates as new decks emerge, things like that. So what I'm going to do is walk you through a 4-tier format and I'm going to show you where I think all the warlords are right now in the current meta. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to pick out a few decks from each of the tiers to kind of like bring to life and just give you an example of what the decks might look like. So yeah, if you like that, please hit the like button, and thank you to everybody who is subscribed to the channel. We've gone over 900 subscribers, which is fantastic. If you haven't yet, please do. We're aiming for that big 1K. Okay, so let us dive into the meta snapshot. So first of all, I want to talk about Galleron first. So obviously Galleron has literally, the raid has just finished, and Galleron has not really been available for long enough to truly judge where he is in the meta. I've tried a few different decks. A lot of other people I've spoken to are trying different things with him. We're trying like late game control, mid-range combos, aggro decks. The sense I get early on is that he's actually going to make probably a slightly better aggro deck. He only has 35 health and not much access to heal. And a lot of the cards he doesn't have good synergy with because he doesn't have access to, the dark packs aren't as easy to come by as, say, they are for Abaddon. But he does look like there might be a pretty decent aggro deck. So we'll see how that one develops over the coming few weeks and month. Okay, so let's start with tier 4. Now, I can't believe it, guys, but sadly, I'm going to have to say that Swarmlord is actually in tier 4 for me. I was kind of on the fence with this. I could be persuaded that maybe he's still actually tier 3. But the problem is with Swarmlord is that the tower have arrived in a big way. And Swarmlord, unfortunately, with that one ranged attack, when you're going up a faction against a faction that specializes in flyers and range, it's just not a good recipe for success. So Swarmlord's really hurting. The foundation, the basis for him is not bad, but we've also got to remember he's had some nerfs recently in the form of the Ravenous Hunter combo, etc. So if you're going to run Swarmlord, then I would suggest maybe going with like a stealth build. I know someone messaged me in like Epic rank and in that he'd managed to do really well with Swarmlord there. So maybe at different stages of the ladder, Swarmlord's different, but certainly like once you reach once we're talking about like the top 50 in the meta, that he really does struggle. Imotekh is another sad story, I'm afraid. Imotekh has always been a staple kind of top 2-tier deck, and the Imotekh control at the minute is really hurting. Unfortunately, like over the last few months, Imotekh has just received nerf after nerf after nerf, and he's now in a point where he's really hurting. If you saw the Warpforge survey that we did with the community, we got over 100 bits of feedback on that, you'll see that there were quite a few card reversals that people were asking for from that. So Imotek's really struggling, and he's not particularly good right now. He doesn't have very good card draw, for example, and struggles a lot against the current meta. Imotekh is pretty good though against like the alt control builds, and also pretty good against ultramarines. So watch out for that. If those two archetypes come more into like a dominant position, then Imotekh is worth switching to as more like a prey deck. Outside of that, we've got some of the usual suspects here. Sylar is, Sylar's, they have been buffing his abilities, and in the right situation, they can be quite powerful, but you still, as a player, you're still not in control because of the randomness, the RNG of Sylar. It has benefited a little bit from the fact that, obviously, the new cards have just come out in the raid. So let's see if anybody comes up with anything creative. I certainly haven't seen it yet. Aun'Va is also in a poor position at the minute. I really think that Aun'Va's Warlord ability should only cost 1 to just bring a bit more in line with Zephyrblade and Galen. Just a little bit too slow, not impactful enough on the board at the minute for this meta. And then we've got the Tervigon. Obviously, the Tervigon was up there in tier 1 in my last meta report, and probably received their biggest nerfs, let's be honest, since in the last balance patch. The Warlord ability costs more. and they really hit the whole Termagant synergy, right? So Termagant's just really been smacked to the bottom of the pile when it comes to tyrannies now, and I've yet to really see a competitive playable build since the nerf. Nemesis, sadly, another one that I really like the idea of in Necrons, the kind of tempo warlord, if you like. If you go and check out my videos, you'll see I've got one of my fun ones was around ghost arcs and ghost ships, and I return to that from time to time. Still probably the best I've come up with him, to be honest. But again, just can't really compete in the current meta. And last but not least, I've got Tigerius in there as well, who just doesn't seem to have a home, really. A lot of people say that the vehicle build is best for Tigerius, but I personally just think that I'd rather have Kalgar with the extra health. You know, Tigerius only having 35 health, just really sort of like not a bad ability as a warlord, actually pretty good ability, but you know, quite expensive, and I'd say Aun'Va like outclasses Tigerius even as that sort of Swiss Army penknife now, and the rest of the card pool is just not really doing much with Tigerius at the minute. So that's what I've got for tier 4. I do get a lot of people asking me about Imotekh, so that's the one I'm going to highlight from tier 4 though. If you did want to run Imotekh control, something like this, you know, the idea of using all your flankers, like your Team Blades and your Praetorians to kind of protect you early games. Obviously, you've got the Technomancer to enable you to raise those flankers so they can attack immediately again. You've got your Lich Guard, it's meant to be the kind of... It was one of those cards that got really hit, but your Lich Guard's obviously supposed to be that kind of mid-game vanguard that just kind of slows your opponent down to a halt and gets you through to the late game, where you've got the chance to heal with Conquering Tyrant, to play your AoEs, and of course ultimately we want to get the Tomb World, bringing back fairly big bodies to kind of give us a win condition at the end. So that's the Imotekh control version if you are collecting Necrons and really looking to play that deck. Alright, in tier 3. So tier 3, I've actually got some interesting ones in here. I actually think that the Venomthrope is at the top of tier 3. Actually, when I was looking at all these, the Venomthrope is it's got a pretty good kind of control deck at the minute. I think actually, if you go and check out the Ecclesiarch's channel, he actually did a video with gameplay footage, and I think his version's pretty good. And if you go and check that out, I think you can have a lot of fun with this deck. One of the interesting things with the Thrope is that for only 1 energy, it can decide to heal or ping, and that flexibility is very good. It always has been, but it's even better right now in a Tau meta where we have 3 health flying drones, right? Because that means that the Venomthrope can kill the drones. Grook is, unfortunately, many will know this is one of my favourite heroes, but unfortunately he's down in tier 3 at the minute. And the main reason for that is that when the Gordrang expansion came out, the cards that came out with that expansion were very powerful and not at all well suited to Grook. Of all the warlords, they had the least synergy with Grook. In fact, they had some anti-synergy with Grook. So Grook you can still make good, very, very powerful decks with Grook. And I've lost a couple of times this season to some ridiculous green wire combos. So if you're going to go green wire, if you want to go wide, then I still think Grook is one of the best for that. But unfortunately, like, the other Orc decks just outshining him and have a slightly better position, a slightly more consistent position in the meta right now. Now, Zephyr was a difficult one because Zephyr another one where I was like, ooh, is this bottom of tier 2, top of tier 3? I think it's up there, top of tier 3. Another thing that's in Zephyrblade's advantage right now is, again, the Tau. The ability to shuriken with the Warlord power means you can kill those drones. However, it does cost you 2 energy, where the Venomthrope only costs you 1 energy to do that. That said, if you see my Fire and Fade video, go and check that out. That video highlights, I think, a deck that can be pretty good against Tau, and also introduces quite an interesting playstyle. One of the good things about Shuriken is it's really good at dealing with things like the shields that come on with a lot of the Tau decks now. It can remove the shield, and then obviously the non-shuriken damage can go through and actually do damage. So Zephyrblade's not in a terrible position at the minute, actually, and he's one of the slightly better kind of like tempo decks and makes good use of stealth. Now, the Uriel used to be the top meta deck not too long ago. Believe it or not, a couple of months ago, this was top of the thing, and they actually made a few nerfs to it, which I feel, and a lot of people feel, were a little bit uncalled for, really. Mainly that they got rid of his ability to get an extra card, and so Uriel is suffering from a consistency problem. However, Uriel is still one of the better aggro decks. If you want to go all out aggro, Uriel's a good one to do, and actually that is not a bad strategy against Tau. So Uriel can be a real problem. If the Tau don't get the right early draw, and Uriel does, then he can win that game quite easily. So Uriel is inconsistent but powerful. Harken's another sort of interesting one. Like, I'm kind of curious to see how Harken benefits from some of the new cards. So things like the Despoilers, obviously giving vulnerable to everything. Just imagine when he's doing 3 blast every turn from his Warlord power. That could be pretty powerful. So there's some unexplored things. One of the things that I've seen this season is a lot of people playing Harken to try to counter Tau. I'm not convinced that he does, but obviously the idea of Tau being a go wide board and Harken having an ability to do 2 blast every turn from a hero power is pretty powerful, actually. And once he synergizes the new cards, there may well be a decent Harken deck, but I still don't think it's really a top tier deck at the minute. Now, Orican is famously known for being the kind of Scarab Warlord. I hope that changes one day, because I actually really love the Warlord ability that Orican gets. But the tempo kind of Scarab package is probably slightly better in the meta right now. As I said, Imotek's very good against Orcs, but the Scarabs is probably slightly better against the Chaos and the Tau. I think neither are in a great place right now, to be honest, but I think it's probably somewhere towards the bottom of tier 3. And last but not least, we've got Marneus Calgar. And I think Calgar is also in need of some buffs, really, in terms of the card pool. I did create a sort of mid-range deck with Calgar this season. I'll go ahead and check out the video for that on my channel if you haven't seen it. That was a lot of fun, that deck, and I had some mixed success with it as well. Definitely prefer it to the Ticarius build, and that's probably the way I would play Calgar right now. So in terms of highlighting a couple of things from tier 3, I'll show you this is the Fire and Fade Zephyr deck. Benefits quite nicely from having stealth units that can't be taken out, and then really putting on the pressure with the Shuriken on the offense. So it's very offense built. It's very much the glass cannon deck, and that's why we run things like the Fire and Fade and the Webway Incursions for stealth, to just basically deny our opponent from hitting back. So it's very much based on the offense, really trying to maximize the use of things like the Wind Riders and the Shroud Runners, particularly against Tau. That is superb and really powerful. So yeah, usual kind of top end for finish, trying to draw into those late game like Crimson Hunters, Wailing Dune, and Hemlock Wraith Fighter to end the game. Don't be surprised in this game as well if you win games just off of Warp Spider, because it's quite often where you can just kind of keep playing Warp Spider with Shuriken and then maybe into something like the Striking Scorpion Exarch, which is a bit like a giant Warp Spider in this deck, and then you just win the game through kind of that repeat stealth format. Next up, we got the Uriel aggro deck. This is the deck I just mentioned earlier. You've probably seen this before. I've done various guides on this again in my videos if you want to go and check them out, including a masterclass which we did with Papabeard, who was at rank 1 with it for a long time. Made a couple of changes in here. I have actually put a Primus Reaver in just to kind of speed it up, and in the 4 drops we've gone with Sergeant Electius instead of the Chaplain, and that's mainly again to address the rise of Tau. Blind is very powerful right now, particularly against Tau, so having 2 sergeants to be able to blind them. In the 1 drop spot we swapped the Scout for the Infiltrator to again just ramp up that blind and give us an advantage in the Tau match. Other than that, it's your pretty bog standard Uriel aggro decks. Like I said, a little bit inconsistent but very powerful. Okay, so tier 2. Now, tier 2 is, remember, these are very powerful decks. These are decks that you can climb easily into the top 50 ladder. When I say easily, I mean obviously if you understand the decks and you understand the matchups, but what I mean is that the power level of the deck is easily good enough for you to make the top 50 with. They also can be decks that can prey on tier 1 decks as well. So what have we got here? Well, first of all, we've got Galleron. Galleron deck has been largely unchanged for months and months and months now, and has always been around here. It's always been around top of tier 2. She's very good. She's very low key at the minute. I think she can beat Tau quite a lot actually, and is probably one of the more underplayed warlords at the top of the ladder at the minute. Honestly, I really think that Galleron is being overlooked at the minute. I'll show you what these decks look like in a second, but we've got Abaddon. Obviously, Abaddon is coming out on top when it comes to the Chaos Warlords at the minute. And Abaddon is going to be interesting to see what happens with the new cards. I've been trying some of the kind of mid-range combo stuff with the Murderous Desires and the Vengeance again. Obviously, we've got a new legendary card in the 3-drop slot. And even like the new 2-drop stratagem as well. It'll be interesting to see how it plays. But the biggest thing for me, actually, out of all the new cards so far has been the Havoc. I think the 6-drop Havoc has really added like a really nice kind of tempo piece in that kind of mid-range bodies, mid-game part of the battle. So yeah, Abaddon's going to be interesting. Still very, very powerful. Very much highly played on ladder. I'm seeing him everywhere. I don't know that he is favoured against Tal, but he can certainly give him a good run for the money. Then we got the Ghazghkull. Everybody seems to have forgotten about Ghazghkull because he did get a nerf, and the big thing from the balance patch was that Ghazghkull's ability no longer gives +1 to range attack, it's only +1 to melee, and that has hurt Ghazghkull, particularly in the Tau match. Ghazghkull prior to that was probably the main counter to Tau. Now I still think Ghazghkull can give Tau a lot of problems and a lot of headaches, and I still think Ghazghkull is one of the better, really deep game, late game kind of control decks out there. It's still very powerful. It's not quite as powerful, but it's still very powerful. Obviously, Will of Gork got nerfed up to 8 energy instead of 7, which I think was a good nerf. I'm really glad that happened. But don't sleep on Ghazghkull. Ghazghkull is still very in the hands of a player who knows what he's doing. Ghazghkull is still right up there and very, very powerful. Shadow Sun is also very good. Shadow Sun suffers mainly from the camouflage rules, especially given that there's an offense card that people can just play. So 50% of your matchups, you're essentially playing in the dark. And when your ability gives marker light, that does hinder some of the good synergies like coordinated strike, which basically means that you can kind of instantly kill something. So Shadow Sun is like sitting there waiting for that to change, please, e.g. And then I think Shadow Sun be very good. But honestly, there is a Battlesuit deck with Shadow Sun that has the hard removal as well, and I think that deck is very, very good, very strong, and you could easily get into the top 50 if you learn to play that deck well. I've also got Zagstruk in tier 2. I probably have Zagstruk just a little bit lower than Ghazghkull. That's what I tried to do with this ordering, by the way, where we've kind of got from left to right. So the idea is that Galen's top of tier 2. It's not an exact science. It is largely my opinion, and let me know if you obviously in the comments if you think that any of them are in a different order. But I do think Zagstruk's up there now. People might wonder, really, BJ, Zagstruk? Honestly, the main reason why Zagstruk's up there is two things. Number one, he's in the Orc faction, and the Orc shell is similar across all of the warlords. But well, not so much Gruk, but across Ghazghkull and Gordrang, the shells are similar, and they're very, very powerful. If they're not the most powerful, if it's not the most powerful shell in the game, it's right up there with, say, like the Galing and Tau shells. So that's the first reason why Zagstruk is still tier 2, because the cards are brilliant. And the second reason is that his abilities actually really well suited to the current meta, right? Like being able to become a flyer with armor and 3 attacks so you can kill drones is super anti-Tau. So my Zagstruk deck is what I climbed into the top 50 with this season, and at the beginning of the season, and it's very, very competitive. And speaking of decks that might be surprising you in this meta report, I'm also going to put Terror of Ardengast here. Now, of all of the choices, this is probably the one that I'm expecting most people to disagree with, but look, I just played him, right? I played him in the top 30 on ladder, and he was getting me a ridiculous win rate and just stealing games left, right, and center. I actually think that Terra is the most consistent aggro deck. If you just want a beat down deck, I actually think he might be the most consistent. And the Alpha Warrior Warlord talent is OP, guys. I am telling you that is literally overtuned at the minute. The amount of power you generate, for 2 energy. Of course, you can have massive turns where he's like a 10 damage flyer. It's insane. But even just getting 2 bodies down is really quite easy and achievable to do with the Alpha Warrior, turning him into a 6 attack melee flyer in a tower meta. That is superb. And this deck, which I'm going to show you, can do a lot of damage to the tower. So let's show you these decks. So this is the Galleron deck. And as I said, this shell's been around a long time, guys. Not much has changed here, really. You're looking to build your Guardian Wall early on, get the Warlock down, build a pretty decent... Maybe you get a Wind Rider in there, getting a bonus to its health as well. And those guys all obviously drop the stones, which we can kind of use and cash in on the mid game. Now, if we need removal, we've got the Eldritch Storm. If we need to build a board, we've got things like the Spirit Seer, and of course we've got the Vengeful Wraithblade for that kind of really powerful flanking turn. That did get nerfed, and I wasn't sure how much that was going to hurt. It's hurt a little bit, I'm not going to lie, but it's still a very good card, and I think it still deserves a couple of spots in the deck. And then towards the late game, we do play the Spirit Seer. I can't say this guy's name. I think it's Kalenaris, something like that. Insane way of getting Spirit Stones fast, and it just puts up a pretty decent body. It's got kind of like 6 range, 6 melee, so it can't be cheated. And then, of course, the Wraithfire and Wailing Doom. This is like your classic tempo deck. If you want to play a deck where you just drop something on curve and you really try and maximize your energy expenditure, this is like the deck for you. However, it does rely on having these exact cards pretty much, and so you've got to have all the legendary cards for it to work. It's the main downside of this deck. But if you are leaning into Eldar, this is a very powerful deck, and it's been a powerful deck for a long time. So here's the Abaddon deck I'm choosing to show you. There are lots of different Abaddon decks flying around, so I'm going to kind of shout out Buggy, as you know, who is one of the best Chaos players at the minute. And this is the version he's actually enjoying at the minute, and he said to me that he thinks that the what's the 10 drop? The 10 drop is not really working at the minute. It's too slow. For some reason I am blanking on the name of it. That draws 4 cards and puts them on the battlefield. He's saying that that's too slow at the minute. So basically, what we've done is he's gone for still a control build, but slightly more mid-rangey. He's managed to get the veteran Havocs in there, and he still has the Hell Brutes as well. Drop the Terminator for the Havoc champion. So it's slightly more like play on curve, and actually doesn't really need to go as late for the 10 drop play, and he's pretty happy with this. We've obviously got the new Galleron's champion in there, one of the malicious volleys as well, so I think this is a pretty powerful deck, to be honest, and I think Buggy has climbed to the top 20 with this deck as well, so really strong Abaddon deck. So this is the aggro deck I was telling you about earlier, guys. I think this is one that if you've got the cards, you should go ahead and try it out. Morlock is very good right now, received a buff recently as well. I feel like this deck is a real sleeper at the minute, and it's really powerful. Combination of Ripper Swarm as well with Alpha is and the Neuraloids as well enable you to create a really giant terror turn when you need it, usually as a finisher. I'm used to playing things like Proper Killy in the Orc faction. It makes me think of that very much so. So yeah, check this deck out, guys. Obviously Ravenous Hunter got nerfed, but it's still powerful, and this deck can just beat down decks and just win races left, right, and center. It is really powerful. We've gone a bit lighter on the stratagems, but I do like the Bounding Leap and the Infestation node in this one. The Bounding Leap really helps us with getting damage through to the Warlord even when they put blockers up, and it helps us in a go wide meta if we need to deal with Tau and things like that. So yeah, go ahead and give this one a go. The Infestation node obviously refilling your hand It's a super powerful deck. If you want to go and see some footage on this, I have released a video on this just very recently, so go and check that one out on my channel. Okay. If you're enjoying this so far, guys, please like and subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate all of the support. So this was the Zag control deck that we were talking about earlier. And again, another one that, if you don't believe me, go and try it. You know, this is very powerful. Stands up pretty nicely to Tau in particular. Obviously, it doesn't do very well against Ghazghkull, because if Zagstruk just keeps getting stunned and he can't do his fly and all the rest of it, then he's at a massive disadvantage in that one, but very good against all the others. And this shell is just incredibly powerful. We have dropped a bomb squig into this just because, again, having that extra AoE, good counter to the DS8 drone from the tower as well. They drop a DS8, you drop a bomb squid, it automatically sort of the AoE backfires onto them, so that's quite a nice combo. But yeah, this deck is really good, and you've got obviously things like Zagstruk's ability with proper killing and Warbikers for a little bit more reach to finish games than say Ghazghkull has as well. Alright, so in the tier 1 slots we have got Aun'Va, Omesos and Ghazghkull. Yep, that's right, guys. All three Tau Lords are in the top 2 tiers, and 2 of them are in tier 1. Well, it is a Tau meta. The last balance patch ensured that, when Tervigon got heavily nerfed and Ghazghkull got nerfed, and Ghazghkull was the main counter to the Tau. So what we've got is both, as I said, the Aun'Va and Omesos propped up, with Ghazghkull being a pretty good counter to them. So there's this interesting kind of like round robin thing going on at the top of the meta. So let's dive in and have a look at what these tier 1 decks might look like. Okay, so the first version I want to show you is the Aun'Va deck. This deck has been refined by Barrick and myself. I've played this a lot this season. And a lot of other players are playing very similar versions of this. If you look at the top 10 right now, to be honest, almost everyone's playing something similar to this. This seems to be like the standard Tau. And what it does is it kind of has this nice balance at the minute in the meta, where it maximizes kind of getting value, but without being too greedy in terms of going deep into the late game. I think the Omesos build is actually more greedy and therefore can get more value than this, but I think that this has a kind of nice balance, really, of being fast enough for the current meta and not needing to go uber greedy. But don't get me wrong, you still get insane value out of this deck with the savior protocols, just making the Piranha ridiculous, and then getting things like free drones from your Enforcer battlesuit or cheaper ones from your Broadside battlesuit. We do run a single Devilfish, and we've actually dropped the missile drones for technological supremacy here, because, to be honest, when you get supremacy off on, let's say, like you play a stealth battlesuit, then the flanking crisis suit comes on, you trade, and then you play technological supremacy to put one of them up to ridiculous health. I mean, like, Chaos just can't deal with a crisis suit that's got 11 health, guys. You know, that's a flyer. They just don't know what to do with that. Not to mention, obviously, things like the Devilfish being a vehicle can also benefit from that. So, just a really good card in this deck. And of course, nice synergies with things like sniper drones benefiting from being able to flank off of a Devilfish, or Aun'Shi being able to do that, or an Honored Ethereal. Remember, these are infantry, so they can charge when the Devilfish comes down. The Stealth Battlesuit, as I already mentioned, is a fantastic 4-drop and gives you a lot of good value in the mid-game, being able to bring on the Crisis Suit. And the other thing with this deck is really trying to master the kind of like, he's really trying to master Aun'Va himself, and to try and decide, like, right, is this a turn where we've built a decent board and actually we want to get some armor down to protect it, or do I have this big trade that I need to make with one of my big units against one of his big units and I need a shield, or do I actually just want to bank a Storm of Fire? Not because I want it this turn, but I'm thinking 2, 3, 4 turns down the line where actually having being able to double Storm of Fire could just win me the game. Lots of strategy in this one. People moan about Tau, but there's actually, it is very powerful, but there's lots of like tactics and lots of lines of play. One of the reasons why it's one of my favorite decks right now is the amount of different lines of play that are often available to you. So this is the Commander Omesos Persian Empire build. This is one that I also made a video for this season. And shout out to Cube Captain, he was the one who inspired this idea. And I think this deck is even more insane than the previous one in terms of the value that it can add, because in this one we've got things like experimental drones, right? So we can actually start getting shielded drones down, which is just insane. We've got the Cold Star. This is the one deck, I talked about this in the video guide, but this is the one deck where the Cold Star battlesuit is often MVP. It's actually really, really good, and you can kind of play this late game, and it just tips the deck over the edge, quite frankly. Now, you could argue that these plays are like greedy, and yes, they're insanely powerful in the late game, but do you really need to go that far? Do most games go that far? And that's where the Aun'Va version is maybe more fitting. But what I like about this particular deck is, like, you just feel like as long as you don't get beaten down, which is not easy to do, by the way, because on Mesos guarantees you a play on the first turn. That you just feel like with this deck that you just can't lose sometimes, unless you are really unlucky with the kind of line of card draw that you get for 3 or 4 turns. But it's superbly powerful, very, very powerful, very frustrating for your opponent. And this is the kind of deck where this is the kind of one I think actually that will have people moaning for nerfs, because it feels bad when this deck goes off and you lose to it. Alright, so last but not least, we have the Ghazghkull deck. Now, the funny thing with this deck is people call it aggro, people call it control. Putis, I've got the version that Putis ran to the top of the ladder. He's still sort of in the top 4, I believe, right now. And, you know, it's pretty good against Aun'Va. It does pretty well. I still think that it's hard to call it an aggro deck because you're running so many control tools, right, with the flankers and the Will of Gorks, double Will of Gorks, board clears. That's a control card, boys. You know, that's not a card you see normally in an aggro deck. But what I would say is it's more to me like a mid-range deck, in that you can choose to really dial up the pressure and go aggro when you need to. So it's got control tools, but it's got insane beatdown potential, right? Ghazghkull is a beast. He's doing 4 damage. He's stunning, so the opponent's Lord can't attack back. And when you look at the AoE that we can put down with the bomb squigs, and we've even got things like attack squig to just kind of stop something for a turn and go past it. It can be really fast. And last but not least, you know, you've got the Pyromaniacs as well. So when, you know, you can do some insane things with this. If people try to block you, you can use Pyro to keep putting that pressure on the enemy Warlord. And obviously proper killy with Ghazghkull and Makari, and the reach is really insane with this. This is, if you want a deck that has reach, this is like the deck for you. So lots of really making use of the powerful Orc Shell with some nice techs in there for the current meta, and then Ghazghkull's ability, which is just very, very well suited at the minute. So yeah, if you're annoyed with Tau, go learn this deck and you'll get a really good win rate against them. So yeah, as I say, Galleron is a question mark to be confirmed. Let's see where Galleron lands in the next few weeks. But right now, that is how I see the current meta. That is the 4 tiers. Let me know in the comments what you agree with. And are there any decks that you think, actually, I've not really given enough focus on? Also, I'm going to do this every 2 weeks, so if you do come up with a really great and interesting deck that's doing well, hit me up on Discord or message me, and I'd always like to know, because I don't want this to just purely be my opinion. I want to try and sort of cultivate and curate the community decks as well to bring that into here. So that is the meta report for this week, guys. Please like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. And until the next one, I'll see you later.